He's just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Absolutely. So our next guy that we're talking about, and there are some similarities in terms of the frame and the build. McLendon Curtis from Chattanooga. He has a Senior Bowl invite. He is going to be likely attending and participating in this. And if you're wondering, oh, what's the significance of Chattanooga? They did produce a first-round guard last year in Cole Strange, and he's been a bit inconsistent with the Patriots, but has shown some tremendous upside as a player because of that raw strength. We're getting a very, very different player in McLendon Curtis. And the one thing that I wrote down, I know that you've got measurements for days, Ryan, and I'm really curious on what the measurements are for him. He has this, and it's a little goofy. It's not like your typical technique when you pass protect, but he likes to stick both of his arms out when he's trying to like feel pressure, which is, it's not typical. But when I watched him do that, the first thing that I wrote down is, holy shit, this guy's frame is massive. His arm length, his ability just to stretch his arms and to be able to do that and touch both of the shoulders of the center and the tackle is insane. So what is the arm length here? Do you have a number?
We do have a number. It's 35-inch arms and a 6'11" wingspan. Which
what was Torrance?
Torrance had 33.25-inch arms. So McLendon Curtis is 35-inch arms. Which, for people that don't understand measurements, in like 34 is a great number for an offensive tackle. It's a really good number for an offensive tackle. 35 is long, brother. Like, that is some silly length for an offensive tackle, which is why I think that Chattanooga tried him out at offensive tackle this year. I mean, I spoke to Rusty Wright in the preseason where he said that he thought McLendon Curtis was arguably the best talent that he has ever coached, and that includes Cole Strange that went in the first round last year. And I think that you see those traits, Joe, because last year McClendon played about 340 pounds. He was down to about 325 this year, still around 6'6", 35-inch arms, playing more offensive tackle. And I actually watched two of his games playing tackle this year.
Yeah.
One in the beginning of the year, one at the end of the year. I'll say this, man. He's definitely a guard at the next level. There's no doubt, because I don't think he's comfortable on an island, but he did have massive improvements from early in the season to the end of the season. So I wouldn't be shocked if some teams look at him and say, in the right system, maybe I can get some tackle play out of him. But regardless, like I don't think that that's his long-term spot. I think he's a true guard because he, like Torrance in a lot of ways, is silly powerful, man. Silly powerful and silly long. And those guys are always going to play on the next level. They're always going to play.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I wrote down, is him having experience playing tackle is going to help his projection to the next level, because the teams that know that if he is a spot starter that we have to throw at tackle in any circumstance, like that is going to help his projection, his draftability. Okay. We were talking about how raw Torrance was. He is really freaking raw. McLendon Curtis is really, really freaking raw. There are so many issues with his technique, his footwork, his hand placement. It's all over the place. It's very, very inconsistent. But because of that length, and then because of like his natural power going up against some of those FCS linemen, he's very easily able to dominate those guys. And that's what makes him very exciting as a prospect. Like, why I will say I'm high on him as a projectable developmental type player. There's going to be a lot of work that needs to take place. And he, again, extremely raw, but those tools that he brings to the table are extremely rare. There are not a lot of guys that have the traits that he has as a guard at the next level.
Well, and the rawness is understandable to a large degree, because he came into the season, although he's that size on the FCS level, he only had 16 starts coming into the year. So he was a relatively inexperienced player. And then, now he goes from offensive guard to offensive tackle as a senior. So there's definitely some inconsistencies, because I don't think he's incredibly comfortable playing one spot, especially. But I think that I agree with you 100%, Joe, in the sense this kid has some rare traits. You don't teach this size, right? You don't teach it. There's not a lot of guys walking around with 35 plus inch arms on the next level. There's not a lot of guys at 6'6", 325 with as good a frame as he has. Like, he has all those things. And I actually think he moves well for a guy his size, man. Like, I think he's got good movement skills. I think his inconsistencies come from, and you mentioned it with the kind of the arms out sometimes in pass protection. I don't think he has great spatial awareness right now because I think he's still learning the intricacies of playing offensive line and seeing things up front, movements, and being able to diagnose things before they happen. He's a very read and react type of player on the offensive line, which is kind of weird for some people because they'll be like, that's a defensive thing. But you could see it for McLendon Curtis that things are just kind of moving a little fast at times, right? So he sees something, then he adjusts to it. If he gets in with a good offensive line coach, there are starter traits here. There's no doubt about it. I don't think that he should be pressed into it too early in his career. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years, kind of developing behind some veterans. But if he gets in with like a Philadelphia Eagles, for instance, because they have a tremendous offensive line coach with the Eagles. If he gets in with someone like that, so a guy a Russ Grimm, some of these offensive line coaches that we know, and are able to develop him properly, Mike Munchak, like those guys, I think will get the best out of him. And if you're patient with a guy like McLendon Curtis, I think he's got starter upside. He's got tremendous projection at the next level. He should be a starter if he is taken along and developed properly. He's definitely got that type of upside for me.
Yeah, the upside is huge. It's significant, and we try to project on this show. Like we don't draft guys, especially now that we're past summer scouting and like we're in the full swing of things. We don't draft guys based on what they are right now. We draft guys based on what they can turn into. And I think even with that development, for me, I'm willing to take him mid to late day 2, like somewhere in the third round, if not early day 3. I'm obsessed with the traits. I know that the technique is a mess, and it is volatile. Like his floor is a lot lower than an Osiris Torrance if he can't figure it out and put it together. Like this is a backup likely if he can't figure it out, or he's not sticking on a roster. And then the flip side of that, like you're talking about, in a patient system, in a patient situation, I think he could be a tremendous player. Like if a guy like Matt Pert from UConn can go where he did, and he was so developmental, he didn't pan out. But if a guy like Matt Pert can go where he did, I believe that McLendon Curtis has that capability to turn into a long-term developmental type player.
It's possible. I mean, I have an early 4th round grade on him. So he's going to be a top 150 player for me, basically when everything stacks up, because there's
so we're not too far. We're not too far off.
No, we're not too far.
Probably off by like 10 spots.
Right. I think he's a risk versus reward player, right? Yeah. I mean, because he is, again, the upside is tremendous, but he does have a little bit of a lower floor, right? Because there is some, and this is the tough part about scouting, is that you can't predict what the fit is going to be and where he lands, right? And that makes it a little bit difficult. If he lands with a program, an organization that doesn't develop offensive line well, very, very well, then he might never be a guy that sticks. Like he has that type of floor, in my opinion. But if he lands with the right spot, I think that's where the developmental upside comes from. So late day 2, I'd start thinking about it for sure, depending on what the board looks like. But I'd definitely start thinking about it in the 4th round. Like that, I think that's the sweet spot, because you're taking a guy that the long term is higher than the floor term of the short term right now. So I think there's a little bit of projection to it, but I do think that he has enough traits where you can talk yourself into, hey, with that size, that length, if he's not a starter within his first 2 years, it's okay, because he has that type of length and athleticism where he can still back up multiple positions. So I like McLendon Curtis a ton. I think he has a lot of developmental upside. It's about patience with him, though, for me.
Yeah, one of the more raw players that we're going to discuss in this recruiting cycle, and a fun one to project. And by the way, I'm calling this right now, Ryan, before we wrap up. He's going to be one of those dudes that he gets to the Senior Bowl and he's at the combine and everyone's going to be geeking out about him. It's like, you got to check out this guy named McLendon Curtis. And, we get to do the bit. Yeah, we get to do the bit of like, well, actually, we already talked about him.
How many people are going to bring up that he's Cole Strange's ex-teammate from last year? Like a billion times.
The hacks, and this is why we call this channel Hack City. The hacks that are lazy and aren't going to actually do the evaluation or watch the film are going to be the ones who do that.
No doubt about it. But they are going to see him. They are going to see him first day of the Senior Bowl and be like, "Who the heck is that guy?
Yes.
Like, what the heck, man?" He's definitely one of those first guy off the bus types, no doubt about it.
Exactly. We've got
Just like you were at Rhode Island.
I was definitely not. We've got more evaluations coming your way. Again, just want to remind everybody this show is presented by Bet Online. Go to betonline.ag. All the latest updates and odds regarding sports betting. Very easy to use interface. Any sport that you can think of, basketball, football, hockey, baseball, whatever it might be, it is a fantastic resource. BetOnline.ag. Use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get a welcome bonus on your first deposit. Folks, we'll be back with more at Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk soon.